Guys, in this video I wanted to take some time to talk about dealing with handgun malfunctions, and what we're going to be doing is demonstrating a few different types of those malfunctions and give you guys a close-up view of dealing with those. And we're going to be using some snap caps, okay? For you YouTube censors out there, reviewers or whatever, these are not live ammo. These are a training round, and we are in a safe environment. This is where I conduct firearms training classes. Before me here I have my Glock 19 Gen 4, and a lot of folks out there, when they're talking about handgun malfunctions, they say, well, a good gun doesn't malfunction. The reality is, if you have any experience with firearms, if you have done any kind of shooting for any length of time, you will eventually have to deal with a handgun malfunction, even from a firearm as reliable as a Glock. Okay, I have had those malfunctions myself happen. I have, of course it was ammo related, but I did have a malfunction with this firearm. Okay, and we're going to be talking about some of the ways that you will deal with that in this video. Okay, the first thing that we're going to look at, I'm actually going to take a few of these training rounds and I am going to insert them into this magazine. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple in here for now to demonstrate something that I want to talk about. One of the first things that can happen when you are shooting is what we call a failure to feed. Okay, I insert the magazine into the firearm, and then I cycle the round into the chamber, and then when I press the trigger, nothing happens. Of course, these being dummy rounds, nothing is going to happen anyways. But I want to show you something. Okay, when I open that action of this firearm, there is nothing in the chamber that we can see, and the reason for that, this magazine is not seated properly. Okay, when the magazine got put in, or for whatever reason when I was gripping it and I accidentally hit the mag release or whatever, the magazine did not get seated properly. That's something that does happen on occasion. Well, how would we deal with something like that? You've heard the expression tap, rack, bang. Okay, and just to show you, we do have this magazine here. It was not fully seated. I did that deliberately. So what you would do is you will basically take your hand, smack the magazine on the bottom to properly seat it. Then you will cycle the action of that firearm. Okay, just like that. Once you cycle the action of that gun, that is one way of dealing with a failure to feed. Okay, that's a very common problem in many cases. If that magazine is not properly seated, a tap, rack, and the gun should be ready for the bang. Okay, it's a very simple process that can help overcome a failure to feed. Okay, that is one of the most common types of malfunctions with a firearm. Okay, you can see here we still do have one cartridge in the magazine. When I open the action, it ejects the cartridge out, the training round out of the gun. That time it did feed because of making sure that the magazine was seated properly. The other thing that the tap, rack, bang solves is if you have a bad cartridge in your firearm. Okay, you want to get as few movements as possible when you're trying to resolve an issue with your firearm. Okay, if you can keep it down to the bare minimum, you can solve a lot of problems with a few common movements, and that's what we're trying to do, particularly under stress. Particularly if you ever did unfortunately find yourself in a situation where you did need to defend yourself, you need to keep it down to where it's just a few common movements that can solve a lot of problems. Okay, that's something that all of us need to work on. Okay, keep it to the basics. If you have a bad cartridge, a bad primer, or anything, that tap solves one problem in case the magazine was not seated properly. The rack, if you did have a bad round, then it's going to eject it out of the firearm. Okay, that's something that has happened to me before. I have had bad cartridges, okay, mostly in like bulk packs and things like that, where I'm going to just out doing some target shooting or whatever. I have had those happen, and that's something that can happen, and there again, it's something that can easily be resolved with just a couple simple movements, okay. The tap, rack, and bang, okay, very simple. That is the first thing that I would recommend everyone practice on, okay. Okay, you make sure that that magazine is properly seated, and of course if you make sure that you have good ammunition in there. Another thing that I wanted to bring up as part of that, okay, this magazine is not currently seated all the way. Something that does happen, especially with a lot of folks that will go and modify their guns, they will add on these extended mag releases and things like that. This mag release is intentionally set up to where you cannot easily get to it, okay? You need to adjust the gun in your hand for most people to be able to hit that mag release, and that's done intentionally because if you have that extended mag release out there, like we see on a lot of competition firearms, when you are under stress or anything like that, if you hit that mag release, just like if I go to get a grip here and I don't have everything just properly lined up, I can accidentally hit that mag release and drop that magazine down, okay? And in a situation like that, you might only have just one shot. But even if you didn't, okay, if you did not have that one shot, that tap, that rack seats that magazine, and it gets you back in the fight, okay? Because what's going to happen, if that magazine is not properly seated, it's not going to get the next round in there. You're going to get one shot, and that's going to be it, okay? You do not have that magazine seated, there again, it's not going to get those rounds up into that chamber the way that it's supposed to be. Okay, so that's something that's very important. I am not a big fan of the extended magazine releases for that very reason. Particularly on defensive guns. I like to keep them simple. I like to make sure that it's going to work when I need it to. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is, of course, reloading your firearm. Okay, we see a lot of these folks out there talking about reloading the gun and how that you keep your head up, you bring this up into your workspace and all that. You know, the thing is, if you are in a situation where you are having to defend yourself and you need to reload, first of all, hopefully you are behind cover, because I seriously doubt that your opponent is going to stand there and wait for you to reload your firearm, okay? Make sure that you are moving to cover, okay? You need to be moving. You need to get somewhere safe. You need to get somewhere out of the line to where you can deal with the problem that you have. If you have run it dry, just like here, you know, if you have gone to slide lock, okay, the first thing is to get your hands on your spare magazine, get the existing magazine out of that firearm. And we're going to do something here because there's actually a couple of problems that we can solve. Okay, we've gone to slide lock, so now I'm going to get that old magazine out, bring in my fresh magazine. I'm going to ram it home, making sure that I have it properly seated, coming up over the top, slingshotting that firearm, and then getting it back into the fight. Okay, very simple process. There again, keeping the problems down to a limited number of movements and keeping things very simple. Now, why do I say go up over the top instead of trying to use the slide stop? Very simple. Under stress, you're going to lose fine motor control. Okay, you're going to have those times to where you're not going to be able to do those fine movements. That is just a side effect of the adrenaline and everything else running in your system. Keep it simple. Seat the magazine up over top, cycle that action, get that gun back in the fight. Now, something else you need to be aware of: when you grip that gun, do not cover that ejection port. Okay, if you're up here like this, if you are covering the ejection port on that firearm, you're going to cause yourself an issue. Okay, if I go to pull that back, you can see here I have created an issue. I did not have my hand out of the way of that ejection port, and now what I have is a double feed, and this is what we're going to be talking about resolving in the next step. Before you saw where I had mentioned about the reloading the gun. If you've gone to slide lock, Basically, this is the same type of process. Just going to get a couple of these dummy rounds into this magazine. What we have here is a double feed, as you can see right there. Okay, because I had my hand over top of that ejection port when I went to cycle the action on it, it induced a malfunction. Okay, since my slide is back, what do I need to do at this point? Same principle. I need to basically reload this gun. First step in that process, I've got to get this magazine out. I press that magazine release. I grip that magazine because there again, with the way that this double feed is, it is not going to let it just fall free. See, I can hold that magazine release down and it's not going to let it drop free on its own. So what I have to do, I have to grip that magazine and I have to strip that magazine out of the gun. Now, there's something that happened here. This gun, the slide went forward. Did it chamber a round or did it chamber an empty cartridge? If I was having an issue before, I probably still have an issue now. So my next start of the process, again, just like I mentioned earlier, we're continuing our reload. I'm getting that fresh magazine in. I am ramming it home, and then I'm coming up over top of the gun. I am cycling out what could have either been an empty cartridge or a bad round. And I'm letting the slide go home at that point. Now the gun should be ready to get back in the fight. Okay guys, that is just a few of the basics of dealing with a malfunction, or at least some of the more common types. You know, if you press that trigger and all you get is a click instead of a bang, tap, rack, bang, and then of course if you get a situation to where the slide is locked back, reload the gun. Okay, get the empty magazine out. Even if you have a double feed like you saw me do earlier, what was those motions that I did? I stripped the magazine out of the firearm, I put a fresh magazine in, and then I cycled the action. Okay, and there again guys, the reason you want to go ahead and cycle that action, I have seen this happen with an empty cartridge, where an empty cartridge has gone back into that chamber. Okay, that's something that you do not want to deal with. If you go back out, you try to get back on target and you press that trigger, what are you going to get? You're going to get just a click. So again, that tap, that rack is going to get that empty casing out or the bad cartridge out, and then get you ready to go for the situation. Guys, this is just a quick video that I wanted to do. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Check out all the links down in the description. Check out my website at boomsticktactical.com. The rest of the videos on the channel. Thanks for watching. Let me hear from you, and we'll see you next time.